All right. As always, please make sure you are completing the review assignments that I send out. Again, I've only had just a few of you guys send them in, so please make sure you are doing that. Please make sure you're checking your email, checking Google Classroom. Welcome to part 2 of memory. So I put out the video the other day. It's kind of long. It's probably close to 20 minutes on memory. Remember, these are about 45, 50 minutes if you watch them on YouTube, the AP Psych ones, and I try to condense that hopefully as close to 20 minutes as I can. I'm not sure I've done over 20 in a while, so please make sure you're watching these. They're saving you some time, and I'm taking directly from the AP Psych videos, so it should be pretty good content. Okay, so part 2 of memory is going to get into retrieval and kind of an introduction to forgetting, why we forget, some of the biological terms associated with forgetting. So real quick, retrieval, remember, once you have encoded information, stimuli, you have encoded that, you have processed that into your memory. Retrieval is bringing it out, right? So retrieval is bringing it out of storage and basically using it. Now, there's some cool stuff. You have recall, you have recognition, you have mnemonics, you have word association. So there's some kind of cool retrieval cues that help us do that. For example, mnemonics, right? Mnemonic devices. There are 5 Great Lakes. As growing up, maybe the teacher taught you mnemonic device of homes, HOMES. To whereas, when you take that test, when you take that quiz, once you remember homes and you have homes, those letters in front of you, you remember, oh yeah, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior, and you get those lakes, right? That helps you. I know some of you guys have made songs for like the quadratic formula or whatever. Those are mnemonic devices, right? These little cues, these little tricks, basically that allow you to retrieve information. Serial position effect. That's what I have always referred to as the primary or primacy recency effect. So when you make a list of something, a grocery list, for example, you are most likely to remember the first thing and the last thing on that list. Why? The first thing you write down is probably the most important to you. It's probably the priority, right? Toilet paper. And then the last thing on the list is just the most recent, right? So it's the freshest in your mind. They say if you're doing presentations, like a business meeting or something like that, the things you want to get across should be when you wrote a list to like prepare for it should be the first thing and the last thing, because those are the 2 you're most likely to remember, right? So if you don't have notes in front of you and stuff like that, the first thing on your list, last thing, most likely to remember those. The von Restorff effect, it's also known, froze up here. Is it going? I can't tell. On my screen, it's frozen. Okay, looks like we're back. The von Restorff effect, it's also known as the distinctiveness effect. It's pretty simple. You are very, very likely to remember unique information, right? So it could be facts, it could be names, of people that you have met, but you are very likely to remember something distinctive, right? It just resonates with you more than something more mundane or something more maybe common. Okay, so again, someone's unique name. You might sit through. Let's say Mr. Bergschneider. You might sit through Mr. Bergschneider's history lesson, and he might be throwing a whole bunch of information out at you, but the only thing you can remember from that was that President Taft got stuck in a bathtub, right? Because that's very unique. It's very interesting. It's out of the ordinary, right? Probably not a lot of presidents got stuck in a bathtub. So it was very distinct, and it's the distinctiveness effect. It allows you to remember that. So remember the von Restorff effect. Priming, we discussed this previously, but it's just different hints, different step-by-step procedures that allow you to think of something. Remember, so it was Allie trying to name I wanted Allie name a banana, so I get her to talk about something yellow. I get talk her about maybe someone's name Anna, a monkey, whatever it might be. Say the word dole fruit. But priming gets you thinking about something specific. Context-dependent memory. So you got a few different kind of memory dependent states here. So context dependent memory, when you encode stimuli in one environment, you are most likely to recall in the same environment, right? So as you learn about President Taft getting stuck in the bathtub, you are more likely to recall that the next time you're in Mr. Bergschneider's classroom, right? Vehicles, again, a conversation you have with somebody in your car, you're most likely to remember that kind of stuff the next time you're in your car, right? Groceries or the kitchen, as you are making your list of what you need to get at the grocery store, and you write down, let's think some kind of out there, toothpaste, right? But somehow you lose your list. You forget all about toothpaste. You don't pick it up. But as soon as you get into the kitchen and you start unloading, oh man, I forgot my toothpaste, right? You didn't remember at the store, but once you got back to the spot you were making the list, boom, you realize you had forgotten it. State dependent memory, that's going to be more of a physical state. As you are very tired, as you are fatigued, certain things, feet hurting, right? So you just got done playing a whole bunch of volleyball games and your feet hurt, right? The next time you get, done with the volleyball tournament, you might think, oh my goodness, remember that one time we had a tournament in Bloomington, my feet were killing, right? So that same kind of state. Mood dependent, that's going to be kind of happy versus sad, depressed, angry, whatever it might be. You are maybe as you are sad, as you are upset, you are more likely to remember other experiences that happened to you in which you were sad or upset, right? So someone breaks up with you, right, and you're feeling really bad, feeling really sad, you maybe remember other breakups, or you maybe remember, oh, I should watch The Notebook, it had breakups in it. So mood dependent. Forgetting. Okay, so forgetting is the presence or increase of errors during retrieval, right? So you have encoded something, right? You have put something into memory. You have probably stored this, but there's some kind of error in retrieving that. Now, there could also have been an error during encoding. There could be an error during storage in which you're not able to retrieve it. But for the most part, forgetting can be defined as the presence of some kind of error when you're trying to recall information. The Ebbinghaus effect, right? So learning and forgetting, Ebbinghaus, you can get back in your notes, but Ebbinghaus used nonsense syllables, and he actually tested it on himself. But if you take stuff that you have no association with, you have no interest in, like these nonsense syllables, and you try to remember a series of nonsense syllables, and the next day you quiz yourself on it, you forget very, very quickly when stuff doesn't matter to you. You forget very, very quickly when you don't rehearse it, right? When you don't study it, when you don't make note cards, when you don't rephrase stuff, all these tricks, and you don't make mnemonic devices, you actually forget very quickly. So Ebbinghaus, with these nonsense syllables, the more rehearsal, the less chance to forget, and the more rehearsal, the less time it takes you to relearn, right? Relearning is the amount of time it takes to remember what has been forgot, right? So as some of you guys used to be great with your states and capitals, right? Now you have probably forgot some of them. You would have to relearn it. But if you rehearse, if you consistently, year after year talking about states and capitals, you never have to take that time. So Ebbinghaus gets down to this idea, and I've talked to you guys multiple times and probably multiple classes about this, but distributed practice. I always call it the spacing effect. Remember, that is basically just avoiding cramming, right? That if you rehearse, if you study, if you review a little bit here and there, then it is going to retain. You're going to learn that stuff. You're going to be much better off, in a class, in life, but in a class than cramming, right? So if your intro to psych class in college, for example, you're going to have 5 big tests and then a final exam, you will have to do far less preparation for your final exam if you really studied throughout the semester, right? So if you don't want to get stuck in a cram session, if you don't want to get stressed out, if you don't want to get overwhelmed going into a final exam, then you should have been studying a little bit periodically throughout the semester. If you don't want to be overwhelmed for an AP exam, then you should have been studying and reviewing and making note cards and preparing all semester. That way you don't get overwhelmed at the end, right as the test is coming along. So practice studying over time. A little each day is much more effective than cramming. It is better for both retention and retrieval. Okay, so now cramming, that's not to say cramming never works, right? Absolutely, 100% cramming does work. Cramming is successful for people, but that is just based on maybe some grades, right? That's not based on long-term retrieval. That's not based on retention, okay? Cramming, again, in states and capitals, cramming might work that 5-10 minutes before you take the test. But then when you had to take the final exam at the end of the semester, at the end of the unit or whatever, you know, that cramming before the one quiz, that didn't have a long-term effect on you, okay? So the Ebbinghaus spacing effect, you know, the more he rehearsed those syllables, the more he retained, the more, the easier, the more efficiently he was able to retrieve those nonsense syllables. Encoding failure, ineffective encoding, decay in the brain, decay of information, retrieval failure, amnesia, and motivated forgetting. Those are all reasons why we don't retrieve. That's why we're sometimes unable to bring information out of storage. They talk about the tip of the tongue phenomena. We talked about that the other day. Encoding specificity. You know, again, retrieval cues are important, especially when you know you have a lot of information that you're trying to study or you're trying to rehearse, you're trying to process, and you're worried about retrieval. Then yeah, come up with some word associations, come up with some mnemonic devices, little tricks, you know, that help you remember stuff. Okay, so you talk about a little bit of interference, proactive and retroactive interference. Proactive interference. Okay, so here we go. First one, proactive interference. Old information blocks the retrieval of new information. Okay, so old information kind of prohibits or slows you down from retrieving new information, right? So when you had to change a password, for example, right? Maybe your password expired and you had to update a password. When you go to type it in the first time, the first couple times, you can only think about your old password or passwords, right? So let's just say your password was password 19, right? And then you had to change it to password 20. And then you had to change it again to password 20 exclamation point, right? Well, as you had to change it again, all you can think about was, okay, I know I had password 20. Oh yeah, I had to add an exclamation point to it, but you can't remember the most recent one because old info is blocking it. Which, you know, the inverse there is going to be retroactive interference. That's when new information blocks the retrieval of old information, right? So again, you have changed your password. Boom, your Pleasant Plains school password has been updated. You can remember it, right? But then you log into a different email account, or you try to log into a Netflix account or something like that, and you can't remember the old information, the old passwords, because you have processed and you have been focused on the new password that you just created, right? So retroactive is going to be new info blocks retrieval of old info. FRQ tip they threw out: if interference is present, right? So if you have an FRQ and it's talking about interference, it's talking about, you know, a failure to retrieve. If interference is present, that means retrieval is being blocked. You will have to identify, you have to be very clear in identifying which info is new, right, and which info is old. Then, you know, if it's asking you about proactive interference and retroactive interference, you just want to differentiate between the two, okay? Flip my page here. Okay, retrograde amnesia. So retrograde amnesia is probably what you guys mostly think about for amnesia: the loss of memory, the loss of being able to recall events from your past. Now, probably a disease, right? Probably a degenerative brain disease, or it could be from injury, like a car accident, repeated concussions. So retrograde, going back in the day. Retrograde amnesia is a loss of memory from stuff learned previously, learned prior, okay? Anterograde amnesia is basically losing your short-term memory, losing your ability to make new memories, okay? So inability to create or to store new memories. Now, I'm trying to think, what's her name on Finding Nemo? Dora? Is it Dora? Dory? Dory, I think. My 2-year-old can tell me. But she has amnesia, right? And it would be very, very short term. It most likely be interrograde because she can remember that she has amnesia, right? But when she first meets Marlin, who I think is Nemo's dad, right? After like 20 seconds of talking, she has no idea who he is, right? So intergrade amnesia. FRQ tip here: amnesia. Again, if that is the topic of one of your FRQs, and if it's amnesia, must identify whether memory loss is due to injury or disease in the brain, right? So if they are talking about something in the prompt, you would want to make that connection. A car accident, elderly age, a football player who is aging that had been diagnosed with concussions. Okay, and then you want to indicate whether that person in the prompt is struggling to recall information from the past or struggling to recall new information, right? And then obviously, be very specific in labeling retro and anterograde amnesia. Another term here, motivated forgetting. So again, why might you struggle to retrieve something out of memory you have stored? So motivated forgetting, the conscious or unconscious act of eliminating the awareness of painful or unacceptable thoughts or experiences. Okay, so motivated forgetting would be directly tied with Freud in repression, right? Freud says, things that are really traumatic to us, things that would damage us if we thought about them, if we remembered them, things that would, overwhelm us, bring about stressful and anxiety invoking tension. That stuff we repress. We send it to the back of the brain. We drop it down to our unconscious levels, right? Because it's too difficult for us. Motivated forgetting is along that same level. Now, probably not necessarily with like what Freud would say with repression, but it could be something where I don't know. Let's say who we want to use. Get an example here. Let's go with Heidi. Heidi, I hope you're watching. Heidi had a good basketball season, right? And county champs and regional champs and sectional champs, super sectional. You guys know how the story and state champs, right? And 15 years later, 20 years later, or whatever, as Heidi is talking about her senior year basketball season, she remembers all this good stuff, but she might be a little bit more motivated to forget some of the bad stuff that happened this season. And I'm making this up, but having fouled out of some of the big games and wasn't on the floor at the end, to celebrate, or maybe that time, it was her job to stop the other team's best player, but the other team's best player just kept getting buckets, right? So she might be motivated to forget that and focus on the better stuff. So bad sports memories from high school, you guys have some of that. You might be motivated to forget some of the times you have made other people feel bad, because if you recall those times, if you have to focus on those, that makes you feel worse about yourself, right? You would have to be honest, and you would have to realize you're a jerk, or you're a bad human being. So sometimes when we have made people feel bad, we intentionally forget that, right? We are motivated to not remember that because we don't want to feel bad about ourselves. Sometimes we are motivated to forget chores, right? Because there's other things we'd rather be doing. And I know I can't get outside and play football in the neighborhood with my buddies if I'm inside unloading the dishwasher, right? So I might be, oh, sorry, Mom, I got home and the kids were out there and I went and played with them right away. Yeah, you were motivated to forget about those chores. Okay, so tomorrow I send out the Zoom stuff. Tomorrow we won't go too long, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Talk about some of the assignments, talk about some of the memory stuff, talk about some of the memory stuff I haven't even gotten to yet. Make sure we're all on the same page with the conditioning. That's a big topic for AP Psych. So make sure we're on the same page with classical conditioning and operant conditioning. Okay, so tomorrow, 10:30 a.m., be there.